Hi everyone, Nurse Jenny here from Nurse Life Academy. Since we've covered all of the system topics, I decided to make a quick video on what you need to know when it comes to the exam. If you've wandered here, you probably are looking for some information on the Ccrn, or you're close to taking it, or somewhere in between, so hopefully this information will be helpful for wherever you are in the process. So the Ccrn certification is granted through the American Association of Critical Care Nurses, also known as AACN, and it's a designation signifying that a nurse has achieved a significant level of knowledge and experience working with critically ill patients. It also shows commitment to improving the nursing field and maintaining a level of excellence in your nursing practice. You're eligible to take it if you work in critical care units, emergency departments, or transport teams such as flight nursing. From my personal experience, I gained so much valuable knowledge studying for the Ccrn, and I really think that it elevated my level of critical thinking and clinical reasoning, which translates to better patient care. Some facilities even give a raise to those who obtain their certification, so there's always that monetary incentive, and I would definitely check with your facility, but if you pass your exam, some may cover the costs of the tests and the exam prep resources, so you may be completely reimbursed for it all. Previously, there was a Ccrn, Ccrn-K, and Ccrn-E, but as of November 2023, all of these are just grouped under the title Ccrn, and this has something to do with magnet accreditation. The direct care pathway is the test you want to take if you provide direct care to patients, formerly known as just the Ccrn. And to be eligible for the Ccrn, there are two options. First of all, you need to have a current unencumbered US RN license, and you need to meet either the 2 or the 5-year criteria listed below. There is a 2-year plan where you need to have practiced in direct patient care of acutely or critically ill patients for a total of 1,750 hours within the last 2 years, with 875 of those hours being in the last year. So if you worked 1,750 hours and you've been a critical care nurse for less than 2 years, you are still eligible to take the exam, but you just need that total of 1,750 hours. There also is a 5-year plan where you need to have had practiced in direct patient care of acutely or critically ill patients for 2,000 hours within the last 5 years, with 144 of those hours being in the last year. If you are chosen for an audit, you will have to have a professional associate verify that you have completed these hours. So let's talk about the application process. Before we get into step 1, it is recommended that you are prepared for your exam before scheduling it, or at least on track with studying, because as of this video recorded in December of 2023, you have 180 days to take your exam after you apply for it. Now let me repeat that. Once you apply for your exam, you only have 180 days to take it. And although 180 days is 6 whole months, we all know how fast time flies, and it would be so heartbreaking if you missed the deadline and spent your money and your valuable time just to not be able to sit for the exam. I want to note that a few years ago, you needed to take the exam within 90 days of application, and AACN did note that this may be subject to change. So please visit the AACN website and handbook to see if this has changed since the video. Okay, so step 1 is going to be applying for the exam. Remember, only do this if you know that you will for sure be taking it within the next 180 days. And when you apply for your exam, you are going to have to complete the exam application, sign an honor statement saying that you have completed the hours serving critically ill patients, and you'll have to pay the test fee at this time. If you are an AACN member, your exam will cost $250, and if you're not a member, the exam fee is $365 at the time of this taping. And there are 2 ways that you can apply, either online or through a paper application in the mail. If you're going to take the test in a testing center or as an online proctored exam, it's recommended that you apply online, as the processing is much faster. If you wish to take a paper and pencil exam, are submitting for group testing, or if you are outside the US, you will need to submit a paper application, which can take about 2 to 4 weeks to process. And if you need special accommodations, I believe that you can submit your application first online, and then you will need to submit separate paperwork for your special accommodations that must be submitted 2 to 3 weeks before your scheduled exam date. All right, so you've submitted your application. Great job. Step 2 is to wait for the application to process and be confirmed, and then the AACN will let you know of the next steps to take. Just of note, you will get exam results right away if you take the exam online, either at a testing center or an online proctored exam. But if you take the paper and pencil exam, you will need to wait 6 to 8 weeks for the results. Once you have received your application confirmation email, you can schedule your exam appointment by logging into the AACN customer dashboard and clicking Certification. Under My Certifications, click Schedule Exam below the exam name. Your AACN customer dashboard will display the date by which you must test. Remember that it is 180 days. And here you will find the date of your scheduled exam appointment once you schedule it. When you go to your AACN scheduling page, you will be required to select your preferred testing option. You may choose between taking the exam at a testing center or via live remote proctoring using your own computer and desk in a quiet private location such as your home office. The AACN partners with a testing service called PSI, which has over 300 testing centers in the US, so you can choose one that's close to your home. Now, if you choose the live remote proctoring exam, you will receive an email from PSI with instructions for accessing your online exam. And in that email, you'll be encouraged to use PSI's compatibility check tool to verify that you have the appropriate hardware and software for a remote and online exam. Once you select a testing option, you will be able to schedule your exam appointment. You must schedule your exam at least 24 hours prior to your desired exam date. So if it's a Monday at 2 p.m. and you're like, I'm going to take this tomorrow, you can't schedule it before Tuesday at 2 p.m. since it needs to be 24 hours in advance. And you will receive an email from PSI confirming the date and time of your exam. You can absolutely reschedule your exam. However, if you need to reschedule or cancel your appointment, you must reschedule or cancel 48 hours prior to your scheduled exam date. So if your test is at 10 a.m. on a Friday and it's Thursday morning and you're thinking about moving it to next week, I'm so sorry, but you have lost your chance. So if your exam is on a Friday at 10 a.m., you need to schedule or cancel before Wednesday at 10 a.m. It needs to be more than 48 hours or 2 days before that scheduled time. Lastly, there are no refunds or extensions for missed appointments. Let's talk a little bit about the actual exam. So the Ccrn exam is a 3-hour test consisting of 150 multiple choice items. There are only 4 answer choices, so there are no select all that apply like the NCLEX. There are no crazy unfolding case studies. It is simply A, B, C, or D. One answer, just choose the best one. 80% of the exam focuses on clinical judgment, and the remaining 20% covers professional caring and ethical practice. Now, in order to pass, you need to answer 83 questions correctly out of 125, and this comes out to a 66.4% grade. That is totally doable. And of the 150 items, 125 are scored and 25 of them are used to gather statistical data on item performance for future exams. Now, these 25 questions you probably will not be able to answer even if you've been an ICU nurse for 30 years. They are simply there to gather data for future exams and see how people do. So if you come by a question and you're like, whoa, I have literally no idea, just stop right there. Do not have a meltdown. Do not automatically put yourself into a negative mindset. This is the time where you take a deep breath and you give yourself a pep talk about how maybe this is just one of those questions that might not be counted, and you can totally do this. However, with that being said, do not assume that a difficult question is just a throwaway and it won't matter, because there is no way to differentiate which questions are counted and which ones are not, because they're all scattered all throughout the exam. But again, take a breather, logically go through the question and eliminate what you can and choose the best answer. You can bookmark a question, which we'll talk about later. And lastly, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but do not change your first answer unless you have a good reason to. Also, answer every single question. If you don't know an answer, just pick whatever you think is best, but do not leave any questions blank, because you do have a 25% chance of answering it correctly if you just guess. Like I just mentioned, the exam is 80% clinical judgment and 20% professional caring and ethical practice. Of that 80% of clinical judgment, you can see the breakdown of each topic with a greater weight placed on cardiovascular, respiratory, and multi-system content. Going over a little bit more of the exam, first off, I would recommend do not fly through the beginning without reading the instructions. This also gives you some time to shake off some nerves, just get into the right mindset, and breathing a little bit before you start your actual exam. The instructions and practice questions do not count towards your exam time. I have some things on the slide here that is gone over at the beginning of the exam in the instructions, but I wanted to mention the important ones because I know that when I'm personally anxious, I don't retain information very well, so it's nice to see this ahead of time. First things first, you can either have your clock showing or not showing, and all you have to do is click the time button in the lower corner of the screen. And you can turn this on and off as many times and whenever you want during your exam. So you know best if this is something that helps you or if it's something that makes you more anxious. And when it comes to answering or scrolling through questions, you may either use the keyboard, such as the A, B, C, D, right and left buttons, or you can click the appropriate buttons with your mouse. If you want to move on to the next item, click on the forward arrow on the screen with your mouse, or you can click the right arrow on your keyboard. And if you want to go back to the previous question, you can click the backward arrow on the screen with your mouse, or use the left arrow on the keyboard. This part is what I believe to be one of the most important parts of the instructions. You can bookmark an item so that you can review it for later. So let's say your first question is the longest question you have ever seen in your entire life. It probably won't be, but hypothetically, let's just say it is. Or let's just say it's a difficult question that you don't want to spend a ton of time on in that moment. You can bookmark the question and you can move forward. It will then save it so that you can fast forward through your unanswered or bookmarked questions later instead of having to scroll through every single question to try to find it again. Keep an eye out for the information in the instructions regarding the bookmark button, but it should be a blank square next to the time button. So when you've finished your test, you can click the double arrow button on the bottom of the screen and it will take you directly to any bookmarked questions or any unanswered questions, which you can scroll through with those double arrows. Before you submit your test, I would strongly encourage to repeatedly click through those double arrows to go through and make sure that there are no unanswered questions. Remember, an unanswered question is marked wrong, and if you completely guess, you have a 25% chance of getting it right, even a 50% chance if you narrow it down to 2 answer choices. So if you have time at the end, click through and make sure you don't have any unanswered questions. Let's talk a little bit about how to study for this exam. So at the start of your exam prep, whether you're giving yourself 6 months to study or only 1 month to study, the beginning of your exam prep should be about learning the content. And I don't mean just flipping through the pages of your books and being like, yeah, I've kind of heard about heart sounds. I think I'll be okay. You will find out real quick how okay you'll be once you start taking questions or those post-chapter system tests. And I know that everyone learns in different ways, so maybe you're somebody who reads a book and can retain that information. Maybe you're someone who needs to rewrite the entire textbook to learn the material, like me. Maybe you would benefit from an exam prep course. Whatever it is, use your preferred style of learning or use multiple styles. But if you don't know something, I would spend the time looking it up and understanding it before moving on. And the name of the game here is going to be slowly but surely. You want to take in little amounts of information every day and review the information as you go through your studying to really commit it to memory. Throughout your entire prep, doing questions and reading rationales is going to be super important. And it goes without saying that you need to work on things that you're not good at, right? So if you know that cardiology is not your strong suit, yet cardiology is 17% of the exam, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you that you're going to have to study cardiology a little bit more than you might want to. And you certainly want to put more emphasis on topics that are more heavily weighted, but don't neglect entire topics as those points can definitely add up. Now, the week before the exam, you should be comfortable with all of the content. This is not the time to cram everything. I would encourage you to do 2 or 3 entire 150 question practice tests so that you can become familiar with sitting down for an extended period of time and seeing how it feels to do those 150 questions in a row like you're going to do for your test. I would keep doing practice questions and especially focusing on those rationales to understand why a question is correct. Another reason that I suggest doing this is that it gives you a metric of if you will pass or not. So if you are scoring below about 66 to 70%, I would consider moving your exam and spending time learning and reviewing your weak areas. Remember, you have to reschedule your exam more than 48 hours before that exam time. But at the end of the day, it's completely up to you and how you feel. As for the day before the exam, I would do about 50 questions, look over information that you want to review, and just take some time to relax. It's probably not a good idea to work the day or the night before your exam, but hey, to each their own. As for the day of the exam, you will need a government-issued identification or an ID to gain admission to the exam. And this ID must be current and it must include your photograph and signature. You can use a driver's license, a state or province ID card, a passport, or a US visa, but the name on your ID must match the name in your AACN record. Next, you want to travel light. They will not allow you to bring entire books, papers, or personal items into the testing center. In my personal experience, I checked in and they were able to lock my purse up in a closet, but I don't know if that's the same for everybody, and I would advise bringing a minimum number of items and certainly nothing expensive. Leave your things in your home or in your car. Definitely bring your ID though. Lastly, you want to arrive to the testing center at least 10 to 15 minutes early so that you can find your way to the actual room and get all checked in and can spend a few minutes gathering your bearings. You will not be admitted into your test if you are more than 15 minutes late, so definitely plan ahead. Last but not least, you need to breathe. Easier said than done, I know. I have been in your exact same shoes, and boy, was I anxious. But you have worked so hard to get to this point, and everything is going to be okay. You are fully capable of doing this. If you come across a difficult question, take a second to breathe, break down the question, eliminate any wrong answers, and choose the best one. I hope you guys are able to do things that provide you enjoyment and help you relax while you're studying for this difficult exam. Don't forget to take care of yourself. Well, I don't have too much else to say here. Good luck to you wherever you are in your CCRN journey. Let me know if you have any questions. I do want to mention that liking and subscribing increases your chance of passing the CCRN. Just saying. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Nurse Jenny signing off for Nurse Life Academy. Have a good one.